Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Todd, and I'm the Public Relations Director at Georgia Gwinnett College in Lawrenceville, Georgia. A little bit about GGC. The college opened its doors in 2006 as the first four-year college founded in Georgia in more than 100 years, and the first four-year public college created in the United States in the 21st century. We are a member of the University System of Georgia, and I know that some folks from Georgia have logged on today, so shout out to our Georgia peeps. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm very excited today to introduce two very seasoned professionals who are ready to share their expertise with you. As the Director of Digital Strategy at the University of Virginia, Terrance Henderson leads an in-house digital team and works alongside marketing, content, and creative teams to steward the university's digital footprint and main platforms. Among his long list of responsibilities, Terrance and his team are responsible for the UVA platform's maintenance and strategy, advising and collaborating on best practices and data-driven approaches to optimize content consumption and storytelling across key university digital properties, developing and contributing to UX approaches. And when he's not busy doing all of that, he's developing and executing SEO and SEM strategies, and develops and mentors an in-house team of front and back-end developers. Now, Geoffrey is an executive editor for university communications at Duke University. He's the editor-in-chief of Duke Today, an online university-wide news site which was launched in 2006, and of the Duke Daily, a daily e-newsletter distributed to 50,000 faculty, staff, and students, and others interested in the Duke community. Geoffrey joined Duke University in 1986 as an editor of the Duke Dialogue, a printed weekly newspaper. Before joining Duke, he was a reporter at several weekly and daily newspapers. He attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and after 33 years, he's saying that he still can't root for Duke basketball, except maybe when they're playing Kentucky, and that's a maybe. Well, I'm super excited to be here today and to hear what Geoffrey and Terrance have to share, and I hope you are too. So with that, I will ask Geoffrey to take it away.
Good morning. As Jackie mentioned, I've been at Duke for 34 years, and I spent the first 20 of those editing the Dialogue, this printed weekly newspaper that I was very proud of. In 2006, we killed it off and launched Duke Today, a university news website. I buried the Dialogue with some trepidation because I wasn't certain how the new world of digital news would play out. Duke Today is now 15 years old. And some 6 months ago, as we started the process of redesigning the site, we looked closely at readership trends, and those trends got me wondering whether it was time to bury Duke Today at the young age of 15 years old. The trends showed that in the aftermath of us launching a daily newsletter, the Duke Daily, there was an immediate 9% drop in visitors to the Duke Today homepage. That decline has continued and it has worsened. And over the past spring semester, visits to today.duke.edu were down 35% compared to the spring semester 2 years ago, before we launched the newsletter. But the trends actually brought great news as well. Even as visits to our homepage have dropped by double digits, our story page views in Duke Today over the same time increased 21%. Unique page views increased 24%. Very simply, we were attracting more people to the site to read more stories, and that is everyone's goal in this business. They're just not getting Duke Today stories through the Duke Today homepage. That's why we're talking about this session today. This is a situation that's been replicated at a lot of other universities. During the pandemic, university communication channels have served as essential sources of information and that the community needed and wanted. And while the stories that may originate with our university news sites, in large part, our readers are accessing them through other channels, whether it's news, e-newsletters, social media, or direct sharing. So before we started this very expensive redesign of Duke Today, and before we tried to find the money for that, we had to ask, where does this trend leave the news homepage? Why don't we just have a big blank page with Duke's version of Siri's voice saying, "Hi, I'm Duke Today. Can I help you?" And if we are going to have a homepage, what do all these analytics advise on what it should look like? And what does this change in readership mean for the design of the page, the content, the navigation? And what does it mean for its story pages? I don't actually have a lot of these answers, but we have done 6 months of thinking of what is the essential value of a university news site under these conditions. And I'm not going to bury the lead, but what our thinking has led us to believe is that Duke Today, that any university news site, has special and possibly even unique roles to play in building the university's reputation. But it can do that only if we pay attention to particular issues of design and editorial curation. So that's going to be my theme here. And it's one that I believe is valuable across all universities, from large state schools to small private or even community colleges. But before I expand on that, I'm going to very quickly review Duke Today's history and go over some of the mistakes and serendipitous triumphs that has reinforced this thinking. Again, we started Duke Today when we ended the dialogue in 2006. Our weekly newspaper, we did so to take advantage of what we saw as the internet's ability to tell stories in ways we weren't able to do so just in print. But we were still thinking of the dialogue as a community newspaper when we launched Duke Today, and that shaped our design then. We built numerous sections into it, dropped as many stories as we could on the front page, and presumed that readers would navigate through the sections just like they did their hometown. If that's how readers did it back in 2006, and I'm not really sure they did, it certainly didn't hold up. But we were kind of slow to catch the drift. But one thing that did help us was that an idea we had back then that still holds true for Duke Today in 2021. We attract readers with compelling news of personal interest and functional value, and hope that they hang around for the news we want them to read. We give them the carrots and hope they eat the broccoli. In fact, one of the big selling points early on for Duke Today was promoting the search box, which provided contact information for individuals. Now, that's something every employee needs to find during a workday. We found that that was a great way of getting people to the homepage and hoping they would read the stories. Now, we redesigned the page in 2011, but it still had remnants of a community newspaper. It really wasn't until we did a 2016 redesign that we made the page in a digital-first fashion. At least that's how we understood digital-first meant back then. We stripped the front page of a lot of content. And I won't go into detail now, but if we have time in the questions, I'd like to raise what kinds of things you should be asking in a redesign to determine what the front page and story page should look like. But by the time of the 2016 redesign, even as we thought we were getting ahead of things, readership trends were already changing. Not only were people not using online news sites like they would use a newspaper, other channels were becoming more prominent in accessing our content. Social media had changed the environment we were working in. So in October 2019, we launched the daily newsletter, the Duke Daily, to accompany it. And as I mentioned, the results were spectacular in attracting more readers from a wider audience, even though visitors to Duke Today's homepage dropped significantly. Now, this is an aside, and it doesn't apply to a lot of you, but Duke Today has a particular issue that other university news sites don't have. We promote stories from around the campus, just like any other news site, university news site, but we link directly to the website of the university unit. Stories about remarkable COVID research took readers directly to the engineering school or the health system website rather than Duke Today. And in fact, last week, we paid to run a story from the Wall Street Journal about a Duke class that linked directly to the Wall Street Journal. And in today's Duke Today, we're running a video done by a Duke student that ran in the New York Times. This means we run great content that brings large readership, content that members of the Duke community aren't likely to see otherwise. And it means also that we promoted the prestige and reputation of the different schools and institutes. We built community by driving readerships to their websites. But it also meant that if readers received these stories through a newsletter or social media, they never even saw the Duke Today homepage. And even if they did find it on the Duke Today homepage, they immediately left the site. In short, Duke Today is off the charts for bounce rates, which is generally considered a bad thing. But the goal of Duke Today has never been bringing readers to the homepage, although I admit that when we launched it, that exactly was the metric that we used to denote success back then. The overall goal has always been and always will be to build Duke's reputation. And I'm here to tell you that I think that should be the goal of any university news site, whether it's Duke, a large state university, or a local community college. Our office oversees more than 24 commercial channels, from social media to websites to digital screens, and all of them have reputation building as part of their goals. But there's only 2 channels that reputation is the core reason for existence, and that is the university website, duke.edu, and Duke Today. We launched Duke Today right in the middle of the Duke lacrosse crisis. And one lesson in communications we learned from that is, reputation-wise, there is no distinction between internal and external audiences. We need Duke Today building pride in the university among the internal community because they are ambassadors to the wider world. But we also need a place to showcase the value of the university to an audience that has more peripheral connection to the university. And as we've found that as Duke Today homepage visits decline, the proportion of those that are coming to the homepage, the proportion of people with a peripheral connection is getting larger. In short, people who are coming to Duke Today are less likely to be Duke affiliated than before we launched the daily. Now, why is the university news site so valuable for reputation building? Why does it have special and sometimes even unique qualities that other websites aren't able to do well? How Duke Today differs from other sites is that it's a curated presentation of the best news from across the university, showcasing the excellence of its teaching, scholarship, and research efforts, explaining to the public why this work is valuable and making others want to be part of it. The word curated deserves special emphasis, and I'm going to come back to it in a moment. But this is stuff that a development site can't do, an admissions site can't do. We have a university, a Duke news website for the media, but that isn't curated. That is just an automated site of the most recent releases. And again, I'll get back to that when we talk about curation, return to curation in a moment. But we have 2 particular strategies that we've incorporated, design strategies and function strategies that make particular use of Duke Today's value here. One strategy is content distribution, along with a closely allied issue of archiving and record keeping. Like most university news sites, Duke Today pulls in the best content from the entire university, but we are the only site that not only presents it to readers, but we can funnel it out to the other university news sites. This includes school websites, department websites, the university president's websites, social media feeds, and most importantly at Duke, Scholars at Duke, which serves as the main database for all the university faculty. It's the only university site that can do this. So not only are we presenting the best content of Duke's priority issues, but we're making it possible for other university websites to do so as well. We are also the website of record for the university. A university news site should not just be a presenter of content, but an extensive database demonstrating university priorities. The design must promote that function, make it the first stop for anyone seeking to find past material on those topics, and make it easy for them to do so. And again, we're the only news site at the university that can do that. The second strategy we consider in Duke Today's design is community building. I already mentioned that by linking to other sites, we help build a connection between the 10 different schools and the 7 different institutes at Duke University. They can see themselves within the wider university context. They can get their stories out to people who aren't coming to their sites. This seems like a simple thing, but I suspect your universities are a lot like Duke in that we are really decentralized almost to the point of being siloed. A university news site is a place where we can bring it all together. And I just don't know any other university website at Duke that can do that. So that's the special consideration of what qualities Duke, a university news site brings. I'm going to conclude by asking, how does this shape what a university news editor should focus on? And that returns me to the point of curation. I want to repeat the distinction between a news site that is automated to present the last news releases with one that is curated to present a valuable variety of stories from around the university. For the latter is how the site builds reputation. This is what I actually spend the majority of my time on, and I expect most news editors do as well. We are responsible for community building and ensuring that it serves a place of record for the university, that everyone sees themselves as part of the university. This involves coordination with communicators across campus, checking analytics to ensure that each part of the university is being highlighted and that the website is representing the priorities of the university. Curation prioritizes stories. Not all stories are equal, and I do see some news sites that you go to and almost every story has the same emphasis, and I would encourage people to get away from that. A valuable news site creates a hierarchy that means readers don't have to wade through a slew of award notices to get the information that's most meaningful, and that too builds community. And I'm going to make a second point about news editors by drawing a comparison from my old days when I ran the newspaper. It used to be that when I got the newspaper delivered, my job was done and I could start on the next issue. In the digital world, a news editor's job only starts when the story goes online. There's coordination to do with those in charge of other channels, the ones that are truly driving readers to your stories on everything from sizing and recropping of photos to creating additional text. There's work with your media relations team and in some cases with other unit communicators to encourage them to support the story. And of course, there's a need to connect with the faculty, staff, alumni, students, and anyone else involved in the particular story. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but I'll note that I left a lot out about how the readership trends affect story pages that I would really like to talk about in the questions. But for now, in conclusion, I'm going to just underscore that the one thing this redesign has already reinforced and clarified for me is that if you put the goal of building university reputation at the heart of the news site and shape the design of the site and the role of news editor around that, you can ignore any decline in homepage visits because you'll find that the site continues to play an essential role in university communications. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Terrance Henderson, who is going to take it from a little bit wider strategic approach, the same issue that I just discussed. Terrance.
All right. Great job, Geoffrey. So thanks, everybody. I'm Terrance Henderson, Director of Digital Strategy and University Communications at UVA. And as Geoffrey mentioned, I'm just going to talk to you today about a little bit of the communications trends and learnings that we've found at UVA today, in particular, how it's impacting our news sites and the strategies that we have behind there. So I'm going to do a share here. Let's see if this comes up. See my screen? All right. Great. So at UVA, this is our UVA Today homepage. And so what you'll notice here, just right off the gate, what we'll say with our trends that we found is content. Content is important. Content is the top of the food chain. And the more engaging your content is, that's where users are going to go and seek that out. And so what you'll see with our news page right here above the fold is we're starting off, we offer, the main hero, the feature story, and then we're also offering latest. But what I really want to focus on right here is, while we're going to take a look here at the UVA Today site, that is the central hub for engagement for our content, but we have many tentacles for our distribution channels in which we're driving content back to UVA Today, a little different than what Geoffrey mentioned. We also contain, while content is being driven back on Duke Today, users are driven there, they're dropping them off on other websites. We're actually promoting a lot of the content that we have within article pages within our site, and then finding other opportunities to get users to engage and subscribe to other niche products that we offer for further distribution later down the line. And I'll touch on that a little later in the presentation. So right here, also, as we go down the page, we start to create sections around content categories that we offer. So student experience, research and discovery. And again, what we're trying to offer here is opportunities for the content that's being created by our great content editors and writers, and also units across the university who send in and pitch ideas to us for stories. Those are also published here as well. We're offering opportunities for engagement to happen. Videos are also key for us in this space. What we found is that there's a lot of engagement that's happening around videos and visuals. So anytime there's an opportunity for visuals, we're pushing that out there as part of that storytelling element and increasing that user experience. And as I mentioned before, we also offer internally opportunities for users to sign up to some of our internal offerings. So what you're seeing here is our daily report, which goes out daily to users of the university, to about over 100,000 users daily. And what we're trying to do there is that's a daily curation of stories and interest items that we think users and the community will want to engage with and be driven back to the site to promote other content. We also, within the individual stories, what you'll see down here at the bottom around with daily report and latest news to UVA, we're putting those within the individual articles where any opportunity we have just to get a user to subscribe to increase those distribution channels and our content growth strategies. This central one is what you'll see in one of our research digests where I mentioned that's a niche product. So just jumping back a bit, where we offer research and discovery, what we found through our surveys and through discussions that we've had and just our data that we were reviewing is that there's interest not only around larger groups of the stories that we offer at UVA Today, but around some of those niche products such as research and discovery. So what that turned into for us was an opportunity to offer a research specific newsletter as a pilot that we explored, that we then turned into a newsletter that we put out pretty regularly, a month to 6 weeks, where the digest goes out, and then it's an opportunity for users who are interested in research specific stories to engage with that content. And that distribution is over 200,000. So here are some of the newsletters that I was talking about. So on the left, the UVA Today Daily Report, that's our daily send. We have a UVA This Month, which is a curated list of stories that we think were, in case you missed it, here's some good things to look back at with UVA Today. And then also the Research Digest, which is a specific channel of content, research specific stories. And what we've done with that is we've sat back and we're exploring the data as part of a content growth strategy initiative, where we're trying to identify what are some other opportunities that exist within this realm of content growth, looking at how users are engaging with our content. Right now, we know that the daily report accounts for about 20% of the traffic that we're getting to UVA Today. How users are getting there, 20% are coming from the daily report. And we know that organic search is probably accounting for roughly 30% of how that engagement is happening, while direct users coming directly to UVA to get that content is probably at around, let's just say 12%. So understanding that data, we know that there are different channels that we need to think about outside of the core UVA Today offering or the core news site. So in knowing that, and knowing that 20% also come from social, it's exploring these avenues as part of our content growth strategy. Where can we be? Where can we promote this content? Where can we offer engagement and then drive that traffic back to UVA Today? We also feed internally to internal sites. So virginia.edu, our homepage, I don't know if you've seen this, but on our main hero section, if you go to the homepage now, you'll see we offer a feature story that we have that lives there for several days. And what that also does is that's going to be one story, because in our experience, in our data, what we've learned is not many people are clicking on carousels. So once you get maybe even into that third layer of a carousel, there's not a lot of engagement happening, and that's industry data that we're aware of. So we have a single homepage feature story that when you click there, that's going to drive you back to UVA Today. But then we also offer an at a glance section, which is a mix of not only news content, but any other important content that we need to drive traffic to. When we stood up our COVID website, at that point, when we moved away from the feed, when we moved that particular information out of the feature area, we moved some down to the at a glance. So that's just to give you an idea, but you can see those kind of categories that we have on UVA Today. Those are represented here in the at a glance section. So just another opportunity for some of that evergreen content, some of those really engaging stories that we find that users are interested in or that are really compelling. We put those here, and that's also driving traffic back to the site. And then we have your traditional UVA Today news feed, which also lives on the site. So that's going to be updated with some of the latest and greatest stories that are there. What we also offer is a feed out to other school websites that they can consume feeds and populate their sites with stories that are in those categories of that are of interest to them, or that they want to tag and represent, that may have been written by their school. Because as I mentioned, while we have, as the central communications office, we curate content for UVA Today, we write those stories and we edit those stories. Communicators throughout the university are also great at what they do, and they have stories that they can then contact us about, and we collaborate across the university to then publish those stories, and they will get the author credit on those stories that are represented on UVA Today. So, and again, instead of, while we do link out sometimes, you'll find stories that other units have written living within UVA Today. And then, as I mentioned, on social media, you'll find us on, we're pushing that content to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Video content, really key. We're looking at strategies now around our YouTube and video distribution. We've seen great engagement there. Facebook, at this time, we know that Facebook is counting for roughly around 75% of where our social engagement is happening. So whenever content is published, whenever that traffic is driven back to UVA Today, Facebook is front and center, pushing that engagement there. And then search. Search is another item. So what you're looking at here is our in-house search. What we've done is we're running an internal search appliance, enterprise-wise, called Cluedo. Many of you may have heard of it, you may be using it, but what we do there is it allows us to curate and track those keywords and track engagement and how users are searching and what they're searching for and what's popular. So what is a great feature about that is we can promote internally with some of those in-house ads that I mentioned earlier, and where we can have banner ads. So if you type in UVA Today, or you type in a story related to research or athletics, or what other keywords we find that have been helpful in driving traffic to UVA Today, what we then do is link a stay connected banner or a subscribe banner or a research banner to that keyword that then populates here, and a user can then click on that and get and drive, and it also drives subscriptions and traffic back to our UVA Today website. So what we know in our data collection and research is that we're experiencing, shifts in patterns that I don't know, and shifts in user engagement that I don't know if other universities may be experiencing this as well, but we're managing right now to identify opportunities for growth and opportunities to pivot in small ways, not just full redesigns, which we're coming up on our cycle next summer to begin exploring a full redesign, or what potentially a redesign looks like for UVA Today. But in that process, we're constantly looking at the data with our tools, not only just Google Analytics, but heat maps. We know that our mobile traffic right now is 60% of the traffic that we get to UVA Today is mobile. So whenever we're thinking about any opportunities going forward, we're thinking of a mobile first approach, just as industry best practice. We know that desktop, with it being lower, with that engagement, we know it's still important, but how is that engagement happening on mobile? And as I mentioned, social out there is at the forefront of our minds. So what I shared there was just to give you an idea of the different perspectives that we're dealing with in terms of having a core university news site, but then also being aware that, as I mentioned, organic traffic or direct traffic to the site is 12%. So we know that users aren't typing in UVA Today and coming directly there. We're getting it from a lot of sources, be it organic search on Google, our email newsletter products, as well as social and other feeds and formats. So just being aware that while we would never move away from having a core UVA Today website, being aware of how users and that engagement is happening.
Okay. Well, that's been really, really helpful. I'll tell you, I think I'd like to clone both you and Geoffrey. And I imagine a lot of other universities and colleges would like to do the same thing. We do have some questions that have come in during both of your presentations. So if you don't mind, I will go ahead and run down that list. The first one is from Carla. Looks like it's for Geoffrey. He mentioned he linked directly to the WSJ on Duke Today. However, that's behind a firewall and more pubs are joining it. So how do you handle that issue? You're on mute.
That specific story was a special case in which the unit the faculty member worked for really wanted to get access to that story for its own purposes. So they were willing to pay $5,500 to the Wall Street Journal. And that's talking down. It was a normal price is around $11,000 just for a URL that you could use for 60 days that would be public. So as long as they were going to pay for it, we were going to jump aboard and use it as well. So that's a special case. We don't have that money. No, no one does. Firewalls are a big problem for us. I had an F-bomb sent to me from one reader just this week when we, just in the quote of the daily newsletter, linked to a USA Today story that they couldn't get to the full story. So it gets people upset. We tried, and our basic rule is, if it's a firewall, I will not run it in a feature area in Duke Today, and we will not run it as a story in the newsletter. If it's, we will use it in the quote, assuming that the quote is enough for most people. We also have a library service that allows anyone with a Duke Net ID to access the story in ProQuest or Factiva. So there are times that we will use the ProQuest link if people want to get the full text. But yeah, most of the time we just avoid firewalls. This was a special case.
Okay, that makes sense. One more question while I have you here. And it's also from Carla. You had indicated that you're pushing content to all the schools and departments. So who's creating all this content?
Oh, and that's the thing. Communicators from around university. The Duke Today content management system, I can put stories in from Duke Global Health Institute, tag it as Trinity College. So get it up on Duke Today, but because I can tag it Trinity College, it feeds directly into the Trinity College website. The Duke Global Health Institute story website can't do that, but Duke Today can, because we designed it that way. It's through RSS feeds and other aspects. So basically, the content's being written from people around the campus.
Okay. All right. And this looks like this question is for Terrance. What platform are you using to create your newsletters, and how are you sourcing that content you include in the 3 subscriber options in the previous slides?
So to create the content and for distribution, we're using Marketing Cloud. So we have custom email template creation, and then we put it in Marketing Cloud, and then we work with our central office who advancement manages our Marketing Cloud installed there, and we get the lists from there for distribution. But then again, those lists are also populated by some of those in-house ads that I mentioned, where we're sending users to forms to subscribe, at which point when they subscribe, they go on to Ascend, a list for sending that we distribute to.
Okay, all right. And it looks like you had mentioned during your presentation, Terrance, it looks like you had mentioned some numbers and I guess some statistics. And they're wondering what are those numbers referring to? The general UVA website or a UVA news microsite?
The numbers that I'm referencing, all are specific to UVA Today.
Okay, great.
Just engagement, yeah.
And just keeping with you, Terrance, thinking about keeping content fresh, how many stories, especially feature stories, is your office or your team creating a week or maybe a month?
Ooh, I have to go back and double check just to make sure. They're cranking out a lot of content per month. Editors and writers are constantly going. Plus, we have content. So I don't want to sell them short in any way, but I can look up and circle back with that number.
Okay. And I had a question actually. You had indicated that you run a feature story on your homepage. How long do you typically run that story before you move on to another?
Usually a week, unless there's another feature story that comes up that needs to take its place. Like sometimes, news breaks, and then we'll switch it out with another feature story. But usually, probably about a week.
About a week. Okay.
Yeah, at most. Yeah.
Okay. And Taylor had a question for you. What are the open and click-through rates for your daily emails?
Yeah, so those are going to be, our click-throughs are going to be above industry average. So I think Geoffrey mentioned those as well. So I think our numbers align with that too. So it's going to be, open rate is generally north of 35%. And then just the click-throughs themselves are going to be above 20%. And again, when I say above industry average, we're talking the education industry.
Okay, all right. I think this is for Geoffrey. Geoffrey, I really liked your comment about the editor's job starts once the article is posted. Could you expand on this in more detail? Hope we haven't lost Geoffrey. We may have. Okay, well, let's move on while he's trying to log back in. Elizabeth has a question. What content management system do you and does Duke use?
UVA today, we're using Drupal.
Okay, and I think I heard Geoffrey say that Duke used the same. Okay. Someone has another question for you, Terrance. I noticed LinkedIn wasn't listed on your social media channels. We've been seeing that as one of the faster growing traffic drivers to our site. Is that something UVA is utilizing, and are there any successes?
Yeah, so we're using LinkedIn and we're publishing stories there. That's one that we're trying to get more into for engagement, and that's actually on our content growth strategy where we've listed it as an opportunity for us. And so LinkedIn is a space where we're getting more engaged there.
Okay. All right. And then Lori has a question. What is your source or sources of industry average metrics regarding clicks and open rates for newsletters and the website?
Yeah, we're using HubSpot right now for our open rates, and then we also will use other industries. So like for Litmus, we'll use Litmus, and then we'll also use independent services that send mail, like MailChimp, where we'll kind of take a look at their data to see what some of their open and send rates are. So what we want to do is be competitive in the education industry, but we also want to look outside of education and see what just the industry averages are for some of those click-through and open rates.
Okay, all right. And looks like Geoffrey is back in. Geoffrey, can you confirm? One of the questions had to do with the name of your content management system. And
yeah, we're in Drupal.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons why we're in such a rush. Well, we don't seem to be in a rush, but Drupal, we're still in Drupal 7, and they're going to drop support of that next year. So we've got to get this done. So.
Okay. And somebody asked how to spell that. I thought it was D-R-U-P-A-L.
U-P-A-L, yeah. And by the way, we do our newsletters in Emma, and we're pretty optimistic, positive about Emma. We have some wrestling matches with Emma every once in a while, and she wins most of them. But
yeah, actually,
optimistic.
Yeah, I used Emma in a previous job, and I found that fairly easy, fairly straightforward to use. Somebody had asked, and I'm trying to scroll up through these questions.
Yeah, I've lost all the previous questions, so yeah, I'm sorry.
Somebody had asked that you had talked about the job of an editor. and when that starts, and they wanted you to kind of expand on that.
Right, after, once the story gets posted. Well, I mean, generally, immediately, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm contacting the communicator of the unit of the faculty member or student or the alumni. I'm contacting the alumni, saying, hey, this is posted. You might want to point to this. I'm also contacting the people involved in the stories. I'm also going and talking with the people in social media, making sure that they have everything that they need to go. And if it's a news release, I'm talking with the media relations people, making sure that their news release coincides with our story, and we have contact information, that they have the photographs that I have if someone from the media needs. So yeah, and usually that's the start. Some of the crazy things almost always come up on some of the more interesting stories, but that's the basic things right there, those 6 things.
Okay, all right, great. And just a reminder to everyone, you can just send messages in the chat. I am receiving all of them, so feel free to drop your questions into that chat. But meanwhile, while we're waiting for more questions, I was just wondering from the both of you, if you had any thoughts from an audience standpoint, what do you want your audience to know about things that you've talked about? I know you've provided a lot of wonderful points and certainly actionable strategies that we can be taking home today. But what overall, what do you want us to know?
That Duke University is doing really interesting things with faculty and students, in ways on the issues that are very important to solving the world's biggest problems. In one sentence, that would be it. Okay. The second sentence would be all that horseshit that you hear about universities being these, we hate America. That's part of that, is all wrong. We want to make that clear. We've been getting some really interesting emails from alumni, in particular, like Terrance. We send out Duke Today, a newsletter to alumni once a week, and yeah, I save all those emails.
Okay. Well, before I go over to you, Terrance, there was a question that came in for Geoffrey.
Yeah.
His mic is active. Did you mention that your site for media is automated? And if so, why doesn't your team use the same content hierarchy strategy on the site for media?
Yeah, well, the site for media is that it's just for news releases. It's not getting stuff from other units across the campus. So they just plug in the URL, the headline pops up, the media can come to it and see what's the most recent media release. It doesn't have the video from the Duke student did for the New York Times about his whale eyes. And I recommend you take a look at that. The student did a great job. It just doesn't, it's just straight news releases, that's all, and experts list, that's it. So there is no content hierarchy. It's the hierarchy is, here are the news releases. Okay,
all right. And Tina had a question for both of you. How active is your executive leadership team in sharing news content with various stakeholders?
I would say just on the UVA Today side, very involved. So we always know how a story's doing, or we always know or can count on our executive leadership to send that from our VP on up the chain to messages and everything going out to the BOV. I mean, we recently created a timeline for the strategic plan that was curated with nothing but, or primarily maybe 90% UVA Today stories. So our executive leadership has eyes on the content that's coming out.
Okay. And how about you, Geoffrey?
I never find out if they're doing it. You think they tell me? Every once in a while I get it. Yeah, I get a sense that, I mean, I get told that we love this story. We shared it with the trustees. And the good thing is my co-editor of the newsletter is responsible for sending out the monthly email to the university trustees. So we have a little inside. She always makes sure that the things we're most proud of gets to the trustees. So that's an advantage I'm not sure other universities have. And I'm very appreciative.
Yeah, definitely. I did miss a question up here. And actually, this is my question too. Are your daily newsletters, I think this is for Terrance, are your daily, oh, actually probably for both of you, are your daily newsletters subscription only, or do you send in to all internal faculty, staff, students as an official university communication?
We send it out to all faculty, staff, and students, university side. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky because there are people over at Duke Health that are Duke Health employees and not University School of Medicine employees. So School of Medicine employees get it. And they can unsubscribe. They get it all. And they're allowed to unsubscribe, but we do allow people to subscribe as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say echo that similarly. Yeah. So internally you'll get it, but you have the option to unsubscribe.
And what's your this is my question, sorry. What are your rates of unsubscribing?
People don't unsubscribe. It takes an effort for them to do it.
Yeah.
We've unsubscribed more people when they send us F-bombs than people have actually unsubscribed. So,
yeah.
Okay. A couple more questions. With so much content being created daily, weekly, monthly, how do you choose which articles are shared via social media, via newsletters, and other communication channels?
Yeah, so on our end, that's just, so our social media director works really closely with our managing editor and then the content creators to identify like what she thinks is going to pop on social media. So there's kind of like a feel it out there, but we genuinely have the bases covered where you know something's going to at least get in the daily report, UVA this month, or publish out on social. So we kind of have that ability to see what's trending, what's getting that engagement. In between being featured on virginia.edu, something may not get sent the day that it's published, but we also have a way, or the day that it's published, but we also know that there's some feature stories that are going to get shared on social regardless. But we also have data and analytics where we're looking at that this is getting a good amount of page views, and maybe also something that we push on social.
Okay. Elizabeth would like to know, when it comes to internal employee news like HR, payroll, things like that, how do faculty and staff receive that information on a regular basis? Do you do it through the internet or intranet, or into employee newsletters, direct email? How are you sending that internal specific news to employees?
well, Duke Today is affiliated with another website called Working at Duke that comes out of another office. And that contains that information. They have a once a week, every Wednesday newsletter that goes out to all employees, including the employees of the health system. So that's a lot bigger than our newsletter. And they still have a print publication that comes out, I think, 8 times a year that goes into the mailboxes of all university employees. So we're affiliated, and we actually will use some of their stories that we think need wider attention in our newsletter and on Duke Today. So there's a little bit of crossover.
Okay. And we had talked about unsubscribing from the newsletters. Our friend Laura Douglas Brown at Emory writes, at Emory, we have not allowed them to unsubscribe because key university announcements are included. And because it's sent to auto-populated lists of all Emory employees, which includes Emory Healthcare, how do you maintain your lists with new hires, et cetera?
we have, and hi, Laura, I'll be down at Emory dropping Lucas off in a month. We have someone, we work with HR to get the new employees and the new graduate and undergraduate students. We do it about every 2 months. And so far, Emma has done a really good job of being able to handle that. So right now, we haven't had any hiccups in having a every other month update of employees.
Yeah, on the UVA side, there's going to be, so we're talking about the daily reports or the newsletters that we have from a news perspective, but then we also have a separate emails that'll go to listservs that you can't unsubscribe from. Those will, if those come from the president or the provost or head of HR, then those are going to come to you regardless. You can't unsubscribe for those.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions. So Terrance, while your mic is open, I just wanted to give you the opportunity. You know, what do you want your audiences to know? What do you want us to know?
That there's opportunity out there as with your news sites, thinking about it in terms of how the engagement is happening and those different experiences that users are having when consuming your content. Don't always assume that everyone's front door to your website is your website homepage. A lot of users, again, are starting from Google, they're starting from social, they're starting from email. So making sure that your content strategy and your digital strategy in general is not just centered around when you're considering a redesign, what does our homepage look like? It should also think beyond that. Your roadmap should also include other areas, other avenues, long-standing reaches, feeds to Google, Google sites and other sites within, as communicators within your university on distribution of your content. So make sure your content distribution strategy is the key part of that redesign.
Okay. All right. We have one more question for Terrance, and I'm going to throw it over to Greg. How does UVA push out internal news announcements like HR announcements, things like that?
Those will go with MailChimp. Yeah, so that would be through, oh, sorry, not MailChimp, Marketing Cloud. I saw MailChimp as one of the questions down below and I read platforms like MailChimp, but Marketing Cloud. So all of those will go out through Marketing Cloud. And
since you saw that last question, what platform do you use for email distribution that does not allow folks to unsubscribe? Because many of them require through federal legislation that you allow them to unsubscribe. Are there any out there that don't?
So from our Marketing Cloud, what it does is when you go in there to manage your subscriptions, you'll see a list of the different types of emails that you can manage, like check, yes, I want this, I want that, I want. But that actual email list, while you may uncheck from that list, there's a central list that if they needed to send in a message from the university to that list, then that's going to include everybody that's on that list. You can't be removed from that particular list.
Okay. All right.
Or at least unless you write in, I guess. With
right. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you both very much. You've really provided valuable information today and so helpful, and just appreciate the both of you and that you took the time to speak with us today.